Welcome to another episode of Healthcare Connections podcast, powered by Healthcare Compliance Pros. I am your host, Jeremy Winn. Our purpose for this podcast is to introduce you to key topics and experts in the healthcare industry to ensure you have what you need to successfully manage your practice. Please subscribe and follow us on our social media channels to make sure you don't miss any new episodes. If you have recommendations for guests or topics for this podcast, email me at jwin@hcp.md. With that, enjoy this episode of the Healthcare Connections podcast. Hello, and welcome out to another episode of the Healthcare Connections podcast. I'm Jeremy Winn, your host. I'm really excited to bring you another guest today, somebody who's become a good friend of mine as we've talked over the last couple months and started to strategize around things with some of our shared clients. We've got Shane Pickett with us. He is a tax partner at Eide Bailey. So Shane, welcome. I want to give you a couple minutes, introduce yourself to the audience, and so they can get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Thanks for having me. Shane Pickett, I'm a tax partner at Eide Bailey. I specialize, though, in healthcare clients. So physician-owned medical practices is kind of my area of expertise. Probably 90% plus of my clients are in that space. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do a lot of training, a lot of continuing education based in the healthcare space. And so, when it comes to tax returns, we can definitely do those, but we do a lot more than just tax returns and find ways to help your medical practice succeed. So that's kind of what I do. I am based out of the Utah office, the Utah market for us, but we have offices in quite a few different states. We're a Midwest firm primarily, and my client base actually reaches across the country. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely, Shane. So let's jump into some of the topics we want to cover today. The first one that I thought would be really interesting for our listeners deals with ownership of a medical practice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's terms out there that I'm not as familiar with, but I hear all the time is, what's the strategies around buy-ins and buyouts of physicians? And I thought that would be really helpful in today's world of mergers, acquisitions, selling practices, bringing new people in. I
Yeah.
thought that would be maybe a huge topic you could touch on today for us.
Yeah, no, I'd be happy to. We do see this a lot in our clinics, especially as our physician population is aging.
Yeah.
We're seeing a lot of clients come to us and say, "What do we do about these doctors that we have that we want to buy into our practice, or what do we do about I haven't developed anybody to buy into my practice? How do I go about selling this practice?"
Hmm.
We've seen a lot of transactions, and this will be for another episode, Jeremy, but private equity is a big thing where physicians are saying,
Yeah.
maybe I sell to private equity and they can take care of my retirement for me. But if we're looking at selling to another physician, we've helped do that. We call it physician advisory matters. And
Okay.
so what we typically do is we go in and we talk about between you and the other person, or maybe there's several people, about what does a strategy of transfer look like? I mean, how many more years do you have left? What should we do as far as how do we price this?
Hmm.
Everybody thinks that their practice that they've had blood, sweat, and tears for, and they've suffered through the ups and the downs is worth a lot of money. And the reality is, it might be, but we want to value that. We want to make sure you get a fair valuation. Um, so we often will look at your revenues and your earnings. We'll look at the hard assets that you have. So like your tables and chairs and desks, um, your exam rooms, things like that, to show what are we actually selling. And then obviously there's the goodwill side of any practice, which is, I've been working for 20, 25 years in this location. I have a name, I have an address, I have a phone number. That's worth something, and it is. And so what we do is we go in and we help value those things for our clinics and our clients, and then try to structure a deal so that it makes sense for the person retiring and the person buying in. The
Yeah.
last thing you want to do is cash strap your buyer so they can't actually work and stay in business and then they're
Right.
out of business. That's not what you're looking to do. You want it almost to be a beneficial win-win for both parties.
Absolutely.
So we help our clinics go through those steps, those transactions. Obviously, we work with lawyers. We'd love it if a healthcare specific lawyer was involved in the transaction. That usually helps.
Yeah.
And so we'll work with that. We'll talk about different strategies of what are even some tax strategies that you can do to maybe have some of your buy-in called what is commonly referred to as an income shift, and what needs to be an after-tax buyout. So those are some of the things we do for the buy-ins.
I imagine a big part of the valuation and also strategy revolves around real estate when
Yeah.
you're looking at this. I'd be curious, maybe touch on the real estate aspect of these transactions as well and other strategies involved there.
Yeah, so the real estate is a great piece that we've been talking a lot about. When you're a physician, we tell our clients to own your real estate. The reason is you're paying rent anyway. Why not pay it to yourself, right? And physician and medical clinic real estate is actually worth more on the market than just office real estate. So you've got a great piece of retirement, if you will, in your portfolio. That's this office building that you've been renting out. So we talk around strategies too of how do you do that, especially if it's a multi-location practice. Maybe different physicians own different pieces in those buildings, and we've had to talk to them about, well, what does it mean to let a new doctor buy into the practice, and should you let them buy into the real estate? And it's surprising, Jeremy, how many of the physicians don't want to give up their distributions and their rent income because that was money that they had to, sacrifice and take home. And, I don't want you to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Well, what we tell those people is, you know what, those new doctors often will do the same thing you did, which is, why am I paying rent to this retired doctor?
Go
Maybe I
get my
should
own
just,
space.
yeah, maybe I should just go get my own space. And as you can imagine, vacant medical office real estate isn't worth very much. And in your retirement years, you typically don't want to be a landlord. You want to be retired and enjoy your retirement. So we will work with clients on setting up strategies for letting people buy in. Oftentimes, there's a lot of work that has to be done there where you might have to refinance your building and pull a lot of equity out,
Hmm.
because the way you value a real estate is one of the ways you value a real estate is you look at the fair market value and any debts associated with that practice. And if there's no debt, which if you've been in your building for 20 years, there's a possibility you have no debt on that practice.
Right.
It's really hard to pay for a $2 million building when you're a newer physician, but it's a lot easier to pay for a building that has 80% of a loan on it. And so the price, shrinks down, the fair market value shrinks down. And there's various ways you can take that cash. So if you went and refinanced, you can potentially take that cash home with you, as the owner doctor, and then sell that smaller piece to a new physician coming in. Again, working with a lot of the attorneys, you want to work with healthcare attorneys, and there's a lot of things that you need to put into your operating agreement. So we work with our clients kind of on those topics of, if we are going to sell this real estate, which has a high value, how do we go about doing it? What's some of the components we want in our operating agreement to protect the seller
Yeah.
and also to protect the buyer too? So
If there's a physician out there that is saying, I need to start thinking through, I'm ready to retire. I'm ready to start putting strategies in place. When do you recommend they come engage with a group like you? Like how soon in the process? How far out from when they're thinking they want to be done? What's an ideal timeline, and then what's a typical timeline you see?
yeah,
I'm curious.
I mean, ideal would be is you're thinking about that 5 to 10 years before you retire. That's
Yeah,
really ideal, because you've got to bring in an associate that's going to work with you and someone that you want to be a partner with.
yeah,
Typical though, I mean, we see a lot of this when it's closer to retirement age and the retiring physician doesn't really have a choice, unfortunately. And so you're like, well, you either walk out of the door and shut the lights off on your last day, or you find someone that you can sell to. So that's some of the ranges we see. And if you're in a group that is expanding and maybe you've got several physicians already that are part of your ownership group, it's a good idea to do it a little bit before, about a year before. The attorneys, I'm not bagging on attorneys at all, they're great people, but they tend to take a little bit longer because their role is a lot bigger in that transaction. And so they need time to get all the documents ready. You actually need time to review the documents and make sure that everyone's kind of on board with what we've decided.
yeah. The first pass is usually not the last pass on those documents. Yeah, you don't want it to be. Hopefully, it's not that. You haven't reviewed it.
Yeah, so it takes a year probably to get everything ready and get all your ducks in a row, and so I'd probably give it a good year or hopefully more, but at least
Yeah.
a year.
Okay. And then I'd say maybe one more question as we're coming up on our time here, but we are getting towards the end of the year.
Yeah,
And you're a tax partner there at Eide Bailey. So maybe give what's your top piece of advice for a tax strategy, something that maybe a
yeah.
physician or a practice can do between now and the end of the year to maybe help set them up.
Yeah, so Jeremy, my biggest one is probably retirement plans. If you're a physician and not fully funding a retirement plan, you're going to have a hard time in retirement. So, you have a 401k, that's great that you're maximizing your 401k, you're doing a match with your clients. But the other piece is there's what's called a profit share plan. That profit share plan, and forgive me, I don't know the number right off the top of my head, but I think it's $69,000 you can put total contributions into a profit share plan this year.
Okay.
That's great tax savings because most of our physicians are in a 30 to 35% federal tax bracket.
Hmm.
And we're in the state of Utah, and it's about a 5% state credit. So we give you about a 40% tax deduction for
Hmm.
putting roughly $70,000 into your retirement plan. That's a great return on investment. That's $28,000 of tax savings. There are a lot of rules and requirements to do that. There's some things that you have to do. I'd highly recommend going to your financial advisor, or um, you might already have a 401k, so going to them and saying, "Can I do a profit share?" And the answer is yes. It's already inside of your retirement plan. So that's the biggest tax strategy I would give my physicians. And that's a strategy I only give one time, and I only get credit for giving one time. But guess what? Next year, you can
Yeah,
put in
you can you can
$69,000
do
or
it
maybe
again.
even a little bit more
Yeah,
because you've got, they mark that for inflation too. So next year it might be
supposed to go up a little.
71,000.
Yeah. Okay.
So that would be my biggest strategy. And you still have time if you have a 401k plan. If you don't have a 401k plan, you're probably limited and you might have to wait till next year. So
Yeah.
at that point, go buy a big truck.
There you go. Awesome. Well, Shane, thank you so much for being on the episode today.
Yeah.
We'll put all of Shane's information so you can reach out to him if you have any follow-up questions or want to talk with Shane further about some of the things we've discussed today, or just any tax or finance questions around healthcare. You'll see that here coming up at the end of the show. Other than that, Shane, thank you so much for coming on this week to the Healthcare Connections podcast.
Yes. Thank you for having me, Jeremy. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Healthcare Connections podcast. For more information on the topic we covered today, you can reach out to me or to our guest. For any additional information on healthcare compliance pros, feel free to email me at jwin@hcp.md. Don't forget to tune in next week. Thank you.